Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wine with Wita. As we continue the Father series, I have the wonderful Joe Willliams on today. Hi, Joe. How are you?
How you doing? I hope everything's good. It's great to connect online, I guess virtually, but we've been trying to tee this up for a little bit now, but it's good to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely it is. But I was actually looking at your bio this morning, Joe, and I thought, I'm not sure how to introduce you because you have had a stellar career. So let me just point what I've noted. You're an associate professor at the University of Queensland, tick. You've had a stellar NRL career, Canterbury Bulldogs, Penrith Panthers, South Sydney. But by the way, I'm a Parramatta supporter, so that's it's a no-no for me. Yeah, we're not doing so well. And a boxer. You've won many awards. You've written a book, and you've developed all these programs to support young children and First Nations children too. So congratulations on an amazing career so far.
Yeah, I guess I'm really lucky. I just had a conversation before I got on here. I'm really lucky. I've lived about 3 lives. All of those different times have been a different version of me as well. So it's pretty cool to be able to sit, have conversations on a very different topic than I would have had when I was a sports person. I think it's cool now that there's loads of people that know the work that I do that don't know that I was a sports person. And you would have never thought that as a sports person, I would have moved into the area that I'm into. So I'm really grateful. I just say when they read out the long-winded bio, I just say that I'm Joe Willliams, Wiradjuri and Wolgalu man, and I'm a storyteller who likes to help people.
Well, I hope you can tell us an amazing story today, particularly with your parenting, your fatherhood experience, and particularly your mental health difficulties that you experience at a younger age. Now, if you don't mind, talk to me about through how you transitioned from the sport spotlight to then the underlying difficulties, mental health difficulties that you faced.
I was really lucky, I guess, because it's widely spoken about within the sporting communities that I guess people struggle to go to life after sport because it's your job for so long, that's all you do. That's all you wanted to do as a kid. And then, when it gets either taken away from you or you transition out of it, it can be really difficult for a lot of people. I'm really lucky that I transitioned fairly seamlessly. I went, I guess, straight from playing rugby league, then into boxing, and then, almost straight from boxing into the mental health space. So I've never really had that downtime of, hey, what do I do now? I've always been a believer in the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born, then the day you find out why you're born, why the reason we're here. And I guess it took me to some pretty dark and challenging places to find out my why, I guess. So for me, transitioning into sport, from sport into the workplace, firstly around the mental health space and then in the trauma space. And then I guess unconsciously I've been dragged a little bit into the parenting space. Me as a parent, almost 20 years ago, when I first started to be one, you could look at that person and go, there is absolutely no way that this guy will ever give advice on how to be a dad, because I wasn't one. My job, my career at the time was fairly demanding. So I wasn't the best that I could be, put it that way. I'm not going to blame anyone else or anything else. I didn't as a person prioritize where I needed to be and the work that I needed to do as a dad. So it's taken me a long time to get to that. And, there's been some ups and downs in what that has looked like, and also some really challenging conversations of being held to account by my kids, particularly my older kids. They're, almost 20 and almost 18. I have no choice but to sit in that discomfort when they're telling me about their experiences, how they feel with me being, their dad.
And if you were to go back to that dad 20 years ago, what would you tell him that from what you know now?
I'd say, hold on, son. It's going to be all right. I think it's, do the work on yourself, because I heard it the other day. It's like we are the first generation that is actually starting to heal. Right.
Yeah.
And that isn't disrespectful to anyone that's come before us, because the people that came before us lived in some pretty challenging conditions and did the absolute best that they could with the tools that they had, particularly in my community, right? The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, is that we've lived a challenging time for the past 200 odd years, 250 odd years in some of the experiences that we've had with colonization. So it's we are a direct we are living the direct impact of what that had 250 years ago, and the behaviors that we are showing in communities now are a direct response from that. That will be challenging for some people to hear, because there's a lot of fragility when we start to have conversations of truth around colonization, the impact that it's had, because people just think that people are bad people, or little mischievous kids are just little shits of kids. Like, everyone that is coming from an environment of a challenging environment is coming from an environment of survival.
And I like how you said these kids are mischievous, but really their behavior is their communication, which is likely result to the trauma that their past or their family experienced too. Is that what opened up the channel for you to go into the mental health capacity, or were there other areas that allowed you to enter that space?
No, it was through my own experiences first. I'm someone who struggled mentally and emotionally for a long period of my life, and it was, I guess you can look at it the last 10 years, 12 years that I've started to really dive into that and understand what it is and why it is. So for me, I like a lot of teenagers, because we look at teenagers and we say, they're, again, mischievous. They're just up to no good, all of those sort of things that we all experience. But, for me, mine was about escape. I did my best to escape what I was experiencing. And what I was experiencing was some pretty heavy head noise. And, I used substance to try and run away from that. I got sober 18 odd years ago. And once you take substance out of your life, the noise gets sky high. It's time to stop then. And for me, it's been I guess an 18-year period of doing the work, but even more so in the last 10 years, mentally and emotionally, but then also understanding the nuances of behavior and how they are birthed out of discomfort and trauma.
I guess being a dad for you, Joe, that would have been a big motivator for you to create change for yourself, so your children don't experience or are less likely to experience the same difficulties and challenges that you've faced. Did you access any services to help you along the way, or is this more a self proclaimed journey for you?
No, there's been, psychiatrists and psychologists along the way at different points. A large part of my life was about sport. So I had sports psychologists and people that were trying to unlock the mind that way. But as far as, I guess, diving into deep about, the behaviors of who we are and why we are today, that's just been a journey of learning, unlearning, and becoming who I am. Understanding the authentic me as well. That's what I believe a lot of challenges in community are happening, is because we're not living authentically who we are. We're trying to be something else. We're dissociating from who we really are, and always trying to put a facade on to be something different, when we really need to just sit in the discomfort of that, understand what it is, and understand why it is. And then once we understand the why, we can start to do the work on, what's happening.
You talk about authenticity and understanding your why and your purpose and true connection to who you are. How do you teach your children that so they are true to themselves, especially when they're quite young?
I think validating emotions as
Emotions?
young people. Yeah, I've got kids that, as I mentioned, almost 20, almost 18, 13, 10, 6. So who I was as a dad to the older ones to who I am as a dad now, two completely different people. I think validating emotion goes a really long way into helping young people express what they are really feeling and who they really are. Because, think about it. And for those listening, we all would have heard, no, that doesn't hurt. Stop carrying on. Right. So all of those little forms of not validating emotions acts as, I guess, a conduit for us to put walls up. And when we put those walls up, that's when we're not being authentic. So I think true authenticity is a real key, and that can be a hard place because whilst we are getting to those stages of I guess valuing authenticity as individuals, we're not there yet. I don't believe.
No. Recently, I interviewed Stephanie Pinto. I think you follow her, emotional intelligent coach, and her work is the foundation is about emotional intelligence and the importance of emotional vocabulary and really validating a child's emotions and labeling how they are feeling with a word. So it's not just something we dismiss or sweep under the rug, that they're actually having those true feelings, and it's because of a certain underlying issue going on or a connection to something. And so I have so much respect for you that you're able to connect to your children at that level, because so many children aren't able to do that now at all.
You know what's one of the most challenging things, and this may or may not be a connecting piece for a lot of people. One of the most, all right, I would say even the most challenging thing for me when connecting with our young people is finding the vocabulary for them to understand what we're talking about. Because we're adults and we just used to talking with adults a lot of the time, and we expect other people to understand what it is that we're experiencing and how we're trying to have those conversations. So to actually break down and articulate different things with young people is a real challenge to be able to do it, for them to be able to understand it, because for it to land with them as well. Because if we just gloss over what it is, what we mean and how it lands are two very different things. And those two very different impacts of how it lands can be two very different things as well.
Can you give an example to that?
Very different outcomes in how it lands to how they are feeling.
Can you give an example to that?
Of course. So we look at young people, and like I'm on the sporting field a lot, and coaching kids and things like that. And what we can say sometimes is if a kid gets a bump on the knee or gets a bump in the quad, that might hurt, like the old corky. If our kid gets a bump, we as parents, we go, oh, it's okay, just play on, just deal with it. Like there's a fine line between dealing with resilience and silencing what kids feel like. So in those moments, I think if a kid is struggling, I've gone from coaching adults to coaching young people, right? So from last season, I coached 16-year-olds. So you can have almost adult conversations with 16-year-olds, right? To then this year coaching 13-year-old boys. And these 13-year-old boys, some of them have hit puberty, some haven't. Some have the emotional intelligence, some shut down. So it's different ways that we need to articulate what the messages that we're trying to deliver. And when they don't understand the messages that we're delivering, right, just like with our kids, they don't understand at times the message that we're trying to deliver, we get frustrated as a coach, as an adult, as a parent. So we get frustrated because of our own triggers that we're going through, that we're experiencing. So in those moments, it's really easy to, flip the lid because we can't really get out what it is we're trying to say. It's a moment to be able to sit down and just, I guess, sit back in that moment and really start to flesh out what it is that you're trying to say and articulate the messages correctly that we're trying to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read recently that when you're parenting, you're also healing your inner child as well, because we're trying to support our children and the way they express themselves and articulate how they're feeling. But most of the time, us as adults never experienced that because we were dismissed. Our feelings were internalized because it doesn't matter. And naturally, we're then triggered because our children are triggered. But there's that sense of co-regulation that we need to support our nervous system and regulate our emotions to support our children's emotions too.
I work a lot with parents around this sort of stuff, and I work a lot with teachers in schools around this sort of stuff as well, because what I've found in observation over many years with working with schools and teachers is that kids are acting out in classrooms, not because they're a challenging kid, but because they're being triggered by the way that the teacher speaks to them. So understanding those type of things, like our kids get triggered and upset by the way that we speak to them too. And the reason we are speaking to them that way is because we are triggered by what they're experiencing and, what we're going through as well. So, it's different to be able to have these types of conversations in a regulated way for ourselves. As I said, we're the first generation to actually sit in this stuff. So it's going to take some time to go through and teeth.
It's interesting how you say we're the first group in generation of people to go through this healing, and we're tiptoeing all around what's the best approach to do it, right? But my question to you is, what advice would you give fathers who, in my opinion, aren't as expressive as, say, females, and how to encourage them to speak up without the stigma of internalize it, don't talk about it, whereas actually it's okay to talk about these things? What would you tell dads out there?
I'd tell dads to not listen to things that we've been told in the past and start doing some learning. There's an absolute world of information out there now that we can dive into to learn how to do things differently. I recently did a dad's boot camp with a fantastic guy who's a neuroscientist named Nathan Wallace from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and he just, the way he breaks things down, the way he understands the brain and how he articulates it is just incredible. And whilst I was hosting those conversations, I was learning so much as well. I'll tell you what was one of the cool things about it, and not breaking anonymity here because it was a safe environment. I was super impressed with the questions that the dads were coming out and saying. Right, these are dads. These are dads who are doing the work, wanting to learn how to be better dads, as well. So, how do I connect with my team when they're trying to push back against me? What's the best way to emotionally regulate some of the challenges that I'm going through to not trigger my child? Like really in-depth questions like that. And there was many more like deeper questions that I can't go into right now. But what I do recall is that I just sat back and go, holy smokes, these questions are deep, which tells me dads are out there doing the work.
Sounds like there's a lot of self-awareness.
That's exactly.
That they've got all this awareness that they've got these feels, and now they're linking what has always been internalized to an actual terminology And now there's that effect of I can actually resolve this so I don't pass it down to my children, or I can resolve it better in a different way so my children don't encounter the same challenges that I had. I love this, Joe. It's great.
We all repeat what we learn, right? Rightly or wrongly. If I get up and go to the gym every morning, my kids ask me, Dad, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to the gym to exercise. Or if I go and get a beer out of the fridge every afternoon, what are you doing, Dad? I'm going to get a beer out of the fridge every afternoon. Our kids are so observant. They may not listen to what we are saying, or we may not feel that they listen to what we are saying, but holy smokes, are they observing what we're doing? Right? It's the way that we respond to things, the way that we speak to people, the nuances in how we treat people. So our kids are always observing. So it's best that we can just do the best we can to model the good behaviors there.
And it's true what they say, that communication is 90 or 70% through non-verbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
So kids are watching and they're learning all through what we're doing as parents.
How many times as parents have we said, "Oh my God, I sound like my dad. Oh my God, I sound like
all the time." All the time.
So that is proof. So why not, make sure that we're modeling good things? Why not make sure that we're modeling, positive behaviors and interactions to our young people so they can learn, even subconsciously learn, the right ways that we can do these things.
How do you keep yourself accountable, Joe, when you feel like you're trickling into old behaviors or patterns that you did to ensure that you don't go back into that again with parenting?
Yeah, I also say that I'm not perfect. I'm the first to admit that. I sit in humility with that, because there are times where I, flip the lid as well, and go through different challenges in how I again articulate things. But then the first thing I do immediately, once I acknowledge, I allow us both to have some time, and then I sit down with whoever it might be, and say, Dad, sorry. Dad, Dad didn't mean to say that. Dad didn't mean to make you feel like that. There's a difference in what we say and how they feel as well. Like, we can tell our kids a million times a day that we love them, but there's a difference in them feeling loved.
Yeah.
Right? That's an important thing, is that we can say that we love them, but it's whether or not they feel loved is the difference. There's many different conversations I've had with people where they say, without a doubt, my parents told me they loved me their whole life, but I did not feel loved. I've had many conversations with people like that, in the work that I do with helping people, understand what it is and why it is. And again, it's just about being able to articulate, again, challenges from the older generations with how communication was to how communication is now is very different.
It's so true. And you know what, when you're talking about children although they were told they were loved, they didn't feel they were loved, all that keeps coming to my mind is connecting, having those genuine connections with your children, being present in the moment with them allows them to experience the emotions of being connected, loved, worthiness, genuine relationship building. And I guess even when I reflect to my own childhood, my family's language of love was giving and providing, but having those genuine connective moments was so sparse. And it's about understanding how our children need that more than the basis of other things too.
I just read it was like a pre-read, because it was, the book's not out yet. A psychologist called Mitch Wallace.
Yep.
And the book is called Real Conversations. Great book about connections, about different ways that we can do it. Being the different types of parents that we are as well. In dismissive parents, helicopter parents, all these different things around what we do and how we do it. So keep your eye out for that book. Bit of a plug. Keep your eye out for that book. I found it fantastic.
Sounds great. You know what I'm really loving out of all of this? That we're all creating change. We're all on the same journey of increasing our self-awareness to create better relationships with our children, our grandchildren, and future generations, as well as empowering them to be better versions and authentic versions of themselves too. I want to touch base on this boot camp that you are running currently. I believe it's still a few more weeks to go.
No, recently just finished it. Yeah,
just finished. Okay, and I think when I spoke to you, you said you were starting. Can parents access this boot camp now that it's ceased?
Yeah, I think through the platform. Again, I've got to give a plug to this platform because I actually dove into this platform and I was completely amazed by what it was in the informations that were there that was just absolutely endless. It's a platform called Parent TV. Have a look on Instagram at Parent TV.
And the program's called Being a Dad in the Modern World.
Being a Dad in the Modern World, yeah. That's the 3-week boot camp. The titles were, what is a dad to you? The second week, what is it? I can't think of the actual words now, but it's around not punishing people. I can't think of it.
So people can access it on Parent TV.
Parent TV. Look at Parent TV. I think it's parenttv.com. Or
I'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic platform. Not just because of that dad's boot camp, but because of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos from educators from around the world that talk about different things. So like from kids from 0 to 3, then from 4 to 7, and then from 7 to 12, and teenage years and things like that. So those 3 weeks over that boot camp, I actually learnt a stack load as well from Nathan, because of
mums do it too.
I think that there was a few mums that actually signed up on behalf of the husbands.
You're selling it really well to me that I'm like, oh, this might be really interesting for me as well.
I think there was as I said, there was a few mums that signed up on behalf of their husbands, on behalf of the dads, to whether it was a nudge for the dads to get involved or for them to get the password to have a look at it. I don't know.
So from that boot camp, so what was I know you expressed many dads wanted to connect to be better versions of themselves and to support their children, but what was the main take-home message from that boot camp so other dads can participate?
Yeah, I think the take-home for me from that boot camp was the amount of work that people are doing to try and change the narrative, because one of the weeks was actually rewriting the narrative, right, to from what we've learnt to what we know now to how to do things differently. That second week, it's sitting in my head there again. It's the difference between discipline without damage. Was the second week. So the first week was what is a dad to you. Second week was discipline without damage, and the third week was rewriting the narrative. So 3 really cool weeks around. Nathan goes into some fantastic things about the brain. And how the brain operates, functions during these little meltdowns that we have with our little people. So the best ways to interact, but most importantly, something you said and led into a little bit earlier, is connection. Finding connection with our young people in those challenging moments. Because what we do a lot of the time is that when our kids push back against us, or when we're triggered as parents, is that we disconnect. Right? We send our kids to the room, or we shout and we lose our tops ourselves, and then we're both disconnected. When we're both dysregulated, what we need to do is start to regulate a little bit and sit in that challenging time and have conversations around connection of what we can do to be better in those moments.
I think in the moments, my children are much older. They're 10, 9 and 8. But for me as a mum, letting my kids see my vulnerability and letting them know that mummy has these emotions too, and it's okay because she's an older woman and she's feeling the same thing as me, which I feel allows them to explore their emotions a lot more and feel safe within that moment too.
It's also something that's so simple.
Right? Which is
that
so hard though as well for parents.
Leave me alone. We push our kids out the door when we're we stop ourselves from crying, or we apologize. That's the biggest one. When we get upset, we go, I'm so sorry. We put our head in our hands and we go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Why are we sorry? Like, it's a natural process of regulation is crying and going through these emotional moments. So, they're conversations that we need to dive into as people, as humans, and realize that this is a natural evolutionary process that was, that is within our body to help us through challenging times. So we need to connect to it. We don't silence it.
So Joe, on Wine with Weeda, I created this father series on the basis that when a dad is more involved in the child's therapy process, there's better outcomes for the child's therapy goals, but also for the relationships that they have as a family unit. There's reduced marital stress, more marital satisfaction, and overall the quality of the family well-being is better. And I've had a exercise physiologist, a psychologist, and other dads discussing their experience to empower dads. What suggestions would you give to dads to make them a better version of themselves so they can show up better to their kids?
I think stop running away from ourselves. We're in a generation where we're running away from our authenticity, and that's everything from Netflix to watching the TV to doom scrolling on social media. We're not being our authentic self. The other one is have some one-on-one time with our kids, and let them, because we're stretched for time because of the different challenges that we have in the household or the environment, cost of living, all of that sort of stuff. So all we want to do when we get home from work is have a rest. But our kids are just craving connection with us. So what we need to do, I think, is have a little bit of one-on-one time. What that looks like.
Your one-on-one time is, Joe, to like different to my one-on-one time. Like it's whatever works best for you and your kids. It doesn't have to be the same mold for every single family.
I also think it's whatever works best for the kid. Not ever, we get into this habit of as an adult or as the parent that we tend to go, whatever works best for us, we think is best for them. Like, if my daughter wants to sit down and paint my toenails, then I'll let her sit down and paint my toenails.
What colour?
Multiple colours, and ends up halfway up my shins when she does it. But again, it's about what is best for her in those moments. Or if my boy just wants me to, sit and kick the footy with him, whatever it looks like. I think, and this is me. I'm without a doubt not sitting here and preaching to people and saying that I'm perfect, because I need to find time for this as well. I'm a realist. But I reflect a lot when I have these types of conversations to go, all right, well, what can I do better as well? So just this afternoon, I've organised with one of my young boys to go out and do some technical work on his game a little bit. He's getting to an age where he needs to start to go. If he wants to push on with what he wants to do with playing football, then he needs to learn different things. So we're going to go up and spend some time, an hour at the park this afternoon and just work on some different skill things as an individual. But it's more than just working on the skills as an individual. That's my connection time with him.
It's quality. It's quality time.
He's got me. He's got me in that moment. And if he's got me in that moment, I again, not trying to be a preacher here. If I'm out on the footy field, I can't be on my phone.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, if I'm out on the footy field, then my phone's away in the car or it's somewhere else, then I'm giving him my attention. Right? I'm not perfect at that because my head goes a million miles an hour and I'm always doing different things and talking to different people. So, I'm trying to implement and trying to put in some things into my life to be able to do that.
We're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of the to-do lists in our mind and keeping on top of everything, as well as being connected with kids. But sometimes it's a matter of we need to disconnect to connect. And I love how we keep going back to the connection and following what your kids want to do, right? And in my profession, when we're trying to teach a child to communicate, the biggest tip we give parents is follow the child's lead. And if you follow the child's lead, it will open up channels of interest and motivation in order for the child to hopefully communicate too. Joe, thank you for your vulnerability. It's been such an honor communicating with you and hearing how raw your experiences are and the lessons that you've learned as a dad. I'm sure many dads will connect with you and understand the challenges that you experience and how the journey you've been on has changed your life, but also your children's life too.
Hopefully that, we will begin to see the benefits of this as they get older. I read a really, it's like a heartbreaking stat is that we spend 90% of our child's life with them before the age of 13. And then after that, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because of those teenage years and the brain development years of them not wanting to be around dad, and dad's the worst person in the world. And, then they out of the house and they're trying different things with life as well, and then their own relationships. So we just need to spend more time with our kids, with our young people, to be the best that we can, not just for us. And, we don't do that for a selfish thing. We do it developmentally for them as well, to be able to model good behaviors for them to be able to, have conversations and behaviors for themselves, moving forward for their own relationships.
I love it. It's so true. It's like we're setting the foundations in order for them to further develop their relationships, and if they have children, their relationships and so forth onward, the generations to come, which is so beautiful.
It's a repeated cycle, mate, is that we're always evolving. We're always trying to do our best. We just got to make sure that we're continuously trying to show attention to that so we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Joe, for coming on Wine with Rita. But before you go, I ask all my guests this one question. For you to be a better version of yourself tomorrow, what word will you tell yourself today?
What? Say that again.
Word. So my word of the day is kindness. Being kinder to yourself to be a better version of myself tomorrow. What word would you tell yourself, Joe, for tomorrow? A better version of yourself.
The word I've probably said a lot during this clip as well is authenticity. I'm someone I'm always talking to a million different people, and out of those million different conversations that I have, you get 1,000 different versions of me. It's always authentic. It's always truthful, but the true depth of who I really am. Sometimes we just go for those surface layers. So just be authentic. Try and dig into who you really are. Try and dig into the authentic you to be the best you that you can be. Because if we continuously show up for our kids that way, it's going to impact them. It's going to help their little brains grow and develop, a lot better. And then we can, hopefully trying to have positive interactions and impacts on our next generations to come.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being your authentic self today on Wine with Rita. And I'm sure you will help many fathers, but also parents as well, on this wild ride of parenting.
I just love that I get asked to be in these types of conversations. It's a true honor, because who I was when I first was a dad to who I am now are two very different people. You wouldn't have asked that guy that back then. So I'm glad that I've done the work and still doing the work to better impact those around me. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Well, have a wonderful day, and thank you for being part of the Father series as well.
A real pleasure, mate, and I hope that all dads out there connect with it, and you're doing a really good thing.
Have a wonderful day and enjoy playing soccer with your son. Oh, not soccer, sorry, football. Football, is it? One of them. And getting your toenails painted too with your daughter.
I know. I'm looking forward to that.
Go for the red. It's a standout colour. All right. Have a good one, Joe. Take care.
Thanks, mate. You take it easy.